All right, and we're going to get started. So this is Alim Bakari here again, this every Friday with the Emerge webinar. And today I am excited I'm just really excited to interview what I believe is a very, very smart young man. He is, uh, after our first conversation, I was just thoroughly impressed. And so today the Emerge webinar is brought to you by Viktory Capital. Viktory Capital exists for one reason and one reason only, and that is to connect investors to capital to fund the projects that you need. So, and you can find us at www.viktory, that's Viktory, viktorycapital.com. And please, if you get a chance, ask me why I put a K in Viktory. I have a very unique story to tell you about the K in Viktory. All right. So here we are. I am interviewing Doctor, and I didn't notice until you sent me your bio. I sure hope I have not disrespected you in any way, John, but I did not know that you are Dr. Johnson Crutchfield. Is that correct?
That's me. John is fine. John is fine.
Okay.
I don't think you're gonna get away without explaining to us in a quick way what the K means in Viktory.
Oh man. The K in Viktory stands for the King, the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords. That's who I serve. That's who I am submitted to. So everything I do is in the name of the King of Kings and Lord of Lords, and that is Jesus Christ. So that's why there is a K in Viktory. It could have still been a C. I mean, he is Jesus Christ, but I was sitting around thinking of that one day, and I was like, man, that was interesting. So yeah,
that's pretty good. That's pretty good. He is King of Kings. So
yes.
Thanks for sharing that, and thanks for inviting me on this stream here. I'm glad we're able to have this conversation and have it face to face. I think our last few conversations have been on the phone, so I get
exactly.
Hopefully, y'all can see me.
Good deal. So, if we can, John, why don't we open up and you just tell us about you, how you got started, what was your first transaction, and just just tell us about you and your real estate investment career.
Sure. Well, I am John Crutchfield. Let's see, this is about my 6th year as a real estate investor, but first and foremost, I am a child of God, of course, and I am a father of a wife of 14 years. We got married when I was 19 years old, so that tells you how old I am. And we've got 2 beautiful kids, 6 and 8 years old. We kind of both grew up with humble beginnings and with very stable parents, but definitely grew up poor and not really knowing what poor meant, because we had all the love that you could get from our parents. And so we've moved around quite a bit since getting married in young age, just pursuing education and career. I actually grew up in Florida, in Tallahassee. That's where my parents still stay now. And my wife is from Louisiana. So we've kind of spent some time in those places. We've spent some time in Mississippi, and now we're here spending some time in Texas. And it's been great to meet lots of people, to get involved in real estate investing. It's been great to hear different perspectives and to see different opportunities based on where we've lived. So by trade, I still have a full-time job. I'm on faculty at a couple universities, and my wife is also a faculty member with UTA, and that's what we do by day. And lately, I've begun to spend a lot more time on investing, real estate investing in particular, and trying to invest in people, and investing in growing a business outside of my traditional career. So yeah, I have a doctorate. I went to school a very long time. Um, I'm a former middle school teacher, high school principal, middle school principal, and now I teach college students who are trying to get their license to be educators. So educators and principals. So that's that trade. But I think you asked about my first real estate transaction.
Yeah. So what got you into investing? How did you get started? What was kind of give us some of the background of your first transaction?
Sure. So I'll go all the way back to when we first got married, because when you first get married, you're supposed to buy a house, and we didn't have any kids yet, so we said we're gonna buy a house, and we were in Jackson, Mississippi at the time, and we were green. We both had as good of a job, I think, as you might be able to have at that age. And we went to a bank and got a pre-approval letter to buy our first house, but we were green. We didn't know anything about investing. And we went out and we fell in love with the first starter home that the realtor showed us. We didn't know anything about good deals. We didn't know anything about getting things at a discount, or we just knew that the pre-approval letter said we could afford it. And we offered the price that they were asking. And of course they accepted it. And we lived there for about a year. But it's funny because that decision, although I think, and I know nowadays that we overpaid for that house, that decision kind of prompted us to understand that once you move out of a place, you can rent that place out and still cover the mortgage that you had on that house. Mm-hmm. And that's what started it for us, was the fact that we were able to get more from a renter when we moved and left that house, by renting it out to somebody else. And so several years went by. We ended up moving several more times because we've lived pretty much everywhere that we went to school. And we did that with 2 or 3 more houses, where when we left, we put a renter in the house, and we were collecting rent from the renter, paying the mortgage, and having a little bit extra for when there were maintenance issues and things like that. Okay. But when I really went full gear, I like to tell this part, because I really thought that I was going to be a principal for 30 years of schools. I love kids. I love leadership. I love seeing schools that may be underserved and populations that are underserved have people in positions that can help bring them resources and attention and just lead the right way. So I really loved being an administrator. But once we had our kids, the demand on time just became a real stressor for my family, for my wife. I mean, a high school administrator, you may know or not know, but there's a lot of games after school, and there's a lot of activities where you just need to be there, and the community expects you to be a fixture there. And I had a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old that were needing daddy, and a wife that was needing a husband. And at that stage of life, we made the difficult decision for me to go back to teaching, which a lot of people think a college professor makes a lot of money, but a college professor actually makes less than a principal. Wow. Significantly. And so taking that pay cut and going through that process of saying, okay, I'm going to not be in this career for as long as I thought, in the way that I thought, pushed me to look for other ways to generate revenue that weren't a job, because I needed to be home, right, with my family. So that push is what started Grab the Map Properties, which is the primary business that we invest out of for buying residential and commercial real estate properties. And that has just changed my entire life in 6 years. It changed the way I look at the world. It's changed the way I view money. And it's changed the way that I have time to spend with my family and meet new people like you. So big believer in real estate as a way to just change your family tree, as they say.
Right. Good. So one of the things that I want us to discuss, there's a few things I want to make sure that we cover today, but our our first initial conversation that I had with you, I was really impressed with your investment strategies. You own several properties, and you own several types of properties. And when I talked to you, we were going over some of the properties that you have and some of your acquisition strategy. So if you can kind of share, like case in point, you own a home that you turned into an Airbnb. So let's talk about that. And then if we do have someone that is tuning in that may want to get into Airbnbs, if you could give them any kind of helpful insight into that.
Sure. So my primary investing rationale is that every deal that I do, I want cash flow to result from that deal. Okay. So I am what you call a cash flow investor. You have investors that invest for appreciation when things go up in value. But I'm not that kind of investor. Appreciation is great because it allows you to sell the property later or borrow against the property later at a higher value. But to me, appreciation or the property going up in value is just kind of like icing on the cake. It's not how I invest. I invest by buying a property, looking at the expenses that are going to come from that property, and then looking at the income that I'm going to generate from that property. And every month, I want that income to be positive. And the more that I can invest in properties and make the income positive from those properties every month, the more income that I generate that's not from my primary job. So in the DFW area, a lot of folks invest for appreciation. But since I invest for cash flow, one of the things that I've noticed in this area around football season or generally baseball season, I mean, we're just such a diverse market of things that people come to DFW for. You've got a lot of visitors here that would much rather have a house that feels like home, that has a kitchen, that has a refrigerator, where they can enjoy some amenities, but also have maybe multiple families stay there during their visit. And so that's why we looked at Airbnb as a way to generate even more cash flow than we would with a standard rental. So let's talk about that specific Airbnb in general. So it's a 4-bedroom, 2-bath house in Mansfield, Texas. It's your standard brick house in a great location, good school district. I purchased that house from someone who was trying to sell it as an investment property, right? And if I were to rent that house out normally, a 4-bedroom, 2-bath house, standard brick house in that area would rent for about $2,000 a month. Okay. But with Airbnb, depending on the season, and once we get through coronavirus and all of those types of things, we may be able to rent that same house for anywhere from $200 to $250 a night. Okay. That's with the house being renovated. That's with the house being in good repair, having some amenities like internet, Wi-Fi, some TVs, the electrical included, those things. But that easily is able to, double to triple the income instead of just renting it to one person on a monthly basis. Another reason I like that is because I get to see the house more often because I have higher turnover. So I have a cleaner that goes in the house and will look at it every time somebody leaves, cleans up, make sure that things are in good repair, there's no leaking or shortages. And it allows me to watch the house a little bit closer than I would if I had one tenant living there that might stay for a long time and I don't end up going in the house very much.
Gotcha, gotcha.
Um,
So
so
what is some of the, so those are the pros of Airbnb. What's some of the cons? What's some of the things that can go wrong with an Airbnb?
yeah, so you'll get a lot of requests for house parties.
Okay.
Um, People that want to rent your house for one night and do everything that they wouldn't do in their own. Um, um, it is also a little bit taxing to um, have the constant cleaning,
Okay.
right? And you have to constantly, that's an expense that you wouldn't normally have with
Mhm.
a rental.
Okay.
You're paying for the utilities,
Mhm.
that you wouldn't normally pay for with a normal rental. And
Mhm.
then, as we've been able to see with the COVID-19 crisis, when people stop traveling or they're not traveling, there is a decline in those shorter term rentals. What happened with ours during this time is we had more people that wanted to come and stay in the house long term, instead of people that were coming in for a weekend and paying the higher rates. So luckily for us, ours has stayed rented the entire COVID-19 crisis, but we've had more like 3 to 4 week renters instead of 2 to 3 day rentals.
Okay.
And
Okay.
that does decrease the income a little bit.
Hmm. Hmm. So could you ever see a time where, and I was thinking that COVID-19 would have probably been a great example of it, but since you say it didn't really affect, I was just thinking if you go, if there isn't baseball season or football season, are there ever times where your property stays empty for a whole month and you have to end up funding paying the mortgage out of your pocket?
Right. So I always like to tell people that that's a risk when you're investing in rentals, is that you
Mhm.
may have things happen that cause the property to go vacant. I am a very aggressive and involved investor, so you'd never hear me use words like passive
Okay.
income or passive money.
Okay.
I haven't had the experience of believing in that. Um, but uh, no, I've never had a rental be vacant that was ready for somebody to live in for a month. I've never had that happen. I invest in multiple markets, um, and as long as the rental is available and it's livable in good condition, um, even with the Airbnb and COVID-19, we just don't have vacancies in that way.
Okay.
Um, but that does require you to be very involved.
Right.
Um, with my rentals, like we try to get tenants to let us know 30 days in advance if they're leaving. So we start marketing the property before they're gone. We've got waiting lists, and we're trying to have those properties filled pretty much after that cleaning is done, or that work that needs to be turned over is done. I
Okay.
believe in residential real estate more than any other vehicle of investment. I've got some money in stocks. I've got some money in commercial real estate.
Mhm.
Um, but residential has just been reliable. There's always people looking for a place to live.
Mhm.
And honestly, millennials and below me, it
Mhm.
seems that they like renting. Um, they like not having to worry about maintenance and being able to just call somebody. They like having somebody cut their grass, depending on the property type. Um, they like, renting, and it's fine with me because them renting a property from me allows me to take their money
Mhm.
and use their money to
Mhm.
build wealth for my family and the purposes that we like to contribute to. So
Wow. That's awesome, man. That is awesome. So let's get to your I don't know if this is your newest acquisition. It was probably the newest one since we talked. I know you may have purchased something else since then, but let's talk about your commercial property. So won't you tell us a little bit about that? How you acquired it? What was your strategy and all that?
Sure, sure. So Family Time Mansfield is open, and
Mhm.
we are a open play area for children and a event venue for weddings and um, birthday parties, all of those types of things. We are located right off of 287, and that is a business that is a retail business um, that is a particular strategy that I'd like to share with you.
Okay.
Okay. Most people know McDonald's, right? You know that McDonald's is everywhere, right? And most people know that you can go there and you can order a hamburger, right? Um, but McDonald's is not in the hamburger business, and they would explain that they are not in the hamburger business. McDonald's owns some of the most expensive real estate everywhere,
Mhm.
from the United States to China to the UK, right? They own real estate. And so with this particular business, we are providing a service to the community. We're employing some kids during the summer, and we are providing families a place to play and to enjoy life because we believe in those things. But we're also paying down some real estate that we bought. And uh, pretty expensive building for what we normally do. Um, but we believe in the location so much that we decided to put a business there as a way to pay for the investment that we were making in the building. Now, let's talk about strategy, right?
Okay.
This building is about a 4,000 square foot building on 1 acre of commercial land in Mansfield. Um, the I'll get very specific because somebody might want that information and then they may want to reach
Sure.
out later. So I'm going to be very specific.
Okay.
But it was a $500,000 purchase price that was advertised. So depending on who you are and what your situation is, that may be a lot of money to you. It may be not a lot of money. But for me and the typical house that's in my portfolio, that's a lot of money. I would say that it's 10 times the price of the average rental house that I own. Okay.
Right. Right.
So when I see a purchase price like $500,000, I say, like, that's not something that I can afford. My personal home is not worth that.
Mhm.
I'm looking at all of those things like that's a lot of money. And when I talk to a realtor about that property, there are strategies that I use when I'm talking to them that basically ignores that price. Okay, I want to focus on the seller that's selling the property, and I want to focus on why they're selling the property to see if they actually need that price. Okay, so with this particular building, it was for sale for about a year. Um, and it wasn't moving, it wasn't selling. I contacted the realtor a few times because I've seen it and I had this idea. It's like, this location is great, but I figured it probably was a little overpriced. Very difficult to deal with this particular realtor. Realtors can be great, but this particular realtor was not very responsive. And it seemed like he was really just waiting on that price to come by. He was believing in that. But what you find out a lot of times when you talk to sellers directly is that they have needs that need to be solved right away, and they don't really want to wait at all. So that's what I do a lot when we talk about investing strategies is I try to get directly to the seller as much as possible.
Okay.
If you can get directly to the seller and talk to them about what the reason that they're selling it is, what's their motivation, what they're going to do with the money, all of these questions, sometimes you can solve their problem without um, that purchase price sometimes. And so what happened with this building is I was riding by the building and I rode by it a lot because I was interested. And just so happens that the Airbnb is right next to it.
Mhm.
And I saw the seller's son at the property. And I said, well, you know what? Let me just go talk to this person
Mhm.
outside of the realtor.
Mhm.
Well, he immediately says, I can't talk to you about it. My mom is selling the property. You need to talk to my mom. And me and the seller instantly connected when on the first phone call was like, hey, I'm very interested. This is what I want to do. She had never heard about me. She had never heard that there was a person interested in the property because the realtor was kind of serving as a middle person blocking me out.
Mhm.
And so we worked out a deal just between me and the seller. It did have to go, it went a few months because, she wanted to see if she could work with the realtor to finish selling it. But once that agreement was kind of expired,
Mhm.
we were able to work something out between us.
Mhm.
And so sometimes you have sellers that are willing to be the bank for you instead of you having to bring that entire amount to make that purchase. You'll never know that though if you're not talking directly to the seller. Um, and
So
so
if
that's how I got that particular building.
so if we could just pause right there because you just dropped something that I hope everyone that's uh, that's uh, tuning in. You talked about the owner of the property being the bank. So what you're talking about is what is called owner financing. Can
That's right.
you kind of is so that's one of my most favorite strategies, but a lot of people don't even think of that strategy. And I like the fact that you try to get to the seller because actually, as a successful real estate investor, what it sounds like that you do is you solve people's problems. And in solving their problems, you get control of the asset to do what you need to do. Is that correct?
That's right. And I don't want to make it seem like I'm discounting realtors because
Right,
realtors
right.
do
Oh yeah,
play
of course. Yeah.
an important part. However, um, a lot of realtors do not know about owner financing,
Hmm.
and a lot of their training is on selling things the conventional way, right? You go, you see the purchase price of the property. If it's worth that, you go to a bank, you get a loan, and then you close and everybody exchanges money. That's the typical transaction. And yes, as investors, especially as real estate investors, we have to be very creative because there are limits to the amount of loans you can get in a certain period of time. There are limits to the amount of property a bank might feel comfortable with you owning based on your income and other factors. What there is no limit to, though, is the amount of sellers that may be willing to lend to you if they don't need the lump sum of money right away.
Hmm.
And so owner financing is a really good strategy when you find out that the owner may not need the lump sum, they may need something else that benefits them. And I've done a lot of seller financing based on that, finding out why the seller is selling and what they're going to do with the money. And what a lot of people ask me is, like, why would the seller tell you what the reason they're going to sell the property or what they're going to do with the money? Well, the seller wants to get rid of the property, and they have a plan for what they're going to do with the money. I'm talking to a lady right now on another property where she just inherited from her father. He passed away, unfortunately, and she doesn't want anything to do with tenants. She just doesn't want anything to do with the tenants. And she says, I don't really need the money because he had an insurance policy, but I don't want to do anything with the tenants. That's a very motivated seller who also might be open to seller financing, because my pitch to her is, well, what if you got a check in the mail every month that you didn't have to do anything for, but I took over the property. I took over the maintenance. I took over the taxes, the insurance, and everything. you just got what they call that passive mailbox money.
Mhm.
And in her case, that may work out well for her. We haven't come to terms on it, but that may work out well for her because she doesn't need the lump sum of money right away.
Mhm.
But there are a lot of sellers, you got to find them, but
Mhm.
there are a lot of sellers where they know if they sell a property, they take a tax hit immediately. So
Okay.
some of them want to spread that tax hit out over multiple years. Um, and I offer those sellers owner financing. There are folks who don't need lump sums of money. They just don't need the hassle of having to deal with that investment property. And so seller financing can be a pretty good strategy in that case.
So on your owner financing structures, do you go through a title company and do a title closing and all of that just to make sure that everything is all legal?
It's the only way to do it.
Okay.
It's not rent to own. You need to take possession of the deed. You need
Mhm.
to take possession of the property. You become responsible for the taxes, the insurance. And there are so many attorneys, real estate attorneys that are familiar with this process. They're familiar with the paperwork involved. You don't have to be an expert on it.
Okay.
You just really can go to them and say, hey, I've got a seller. This is what we want to do. And they come up with the paperwork because that's their expertise.
Okay.
So a lot of times I will sit down with a seller and we'll talk and I'll just say, hey, what do you need? You'd be surprised. You might have a guy that just says, hey, I need $1,000 a month, right? That's all I need because they're trying to solve a retirement problem or income problem.
Mhm.
And we'll say, okay, we're going to work this whole deal off of you getting that $1,000 a month. We'll say, how long do you need it for? Well, I don't think I'm going to live more than 10 years. So do you mean if I pay you $1,000 a month for 10 years, I can have this property? And if that solves their problem and it works for the numbers for me and what I'm trying to do and what that property is actually worth, it works out for everybody.
Wow.
And you'd be surprised. Like sometimes we don't even end up talking about purchase price because it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to the seller what the purchase price is if they're trying to solve an income problem.
Wow.
Um, yeah.
So how do you, I know you probably don't want to divulge too much info, but how do you find these motivated sellers? Do you have a a system in place? How do you find your deals?
Right. So I've got another little tidbit I'll share on that.
Okay.
There are deals out here for everybody. And the deals that are meant for me, I'm going to get regardless of what I tell you or what strategy I tell you. So
Mhm.
I share strategies.
Okay.
I teach students if you're interested in learning about real estate.
Okay.
I'll share that website later. But
Okay.
yeah, there's no strategy I won't tell you that I've done.
Okay.
Everything from word of mouth. People know that I buy houses. They know that I do some seller finance, and I do buy most of my properties traditionally. But um, I have gotten referrals from people who say, "Hey, I sold John this property, or I sold John these properties, and he's been paying me every month on time. You might want to talk to him."
Mhm.
Um, but I also do the traditional ways of marketing. So we mail letters to list of people. We can get lists of people who own their properties free and clear.
Mhm.
We can get lists of owners who are what we call absentee landlords. That
Mhm.
means that they're not living in the property, or they might be out of state. Right? I get lists of properties that are late on their property taxes, and we mail those letters. Most recently, I have a lady that knocks on the doors for me if it looks like it's an owner living in the property and they've been there a long time, and the list tells me that they don't owe any money on their
Mhm.
property.
Mhm.
And all of those strategies work when they work.
Mhm.
But it does take time, and it takes some investment in marketing and knocking the doors and mailing the letters, because you may knock on 500 doors and get one,
Right.
right?
Right. Right.
And yeah, that's how we're finding. Lately, I find most of um, my owners by cold calling list of people that own their properties free and clear.
Okay. Okay. So do you call them, or have you hired like a VA or anything like that to do your calling?
Yeah, so I've seen the VA movement. I'm
Hmm.
not participating.
Okay.
I'm a little different type of character. So when you don't come from money,
Hmm.
I think it's important that you try to stay grounded and not
Hmm.
get greedy, right?
Okay. Okay.
So, and I'm not calling people greedy who use VAs,
Hmm.
but I have maintained a commitment to use local people and invest in people from my community in my business.
Okay.
Okay, so I know a lot of VAs are not from here, or they're not in our local immediate areas.
Right.
And so me and my wife have just said, hey, if we start things, we're going to use local people, maybe people that we know or that we meet, and we say, hey, we want to pour into this person, because real estate has changed our entire life.
Right. Right.
And I kid you not, like, we are reaching out to everybody in our circle to try to say, hey, look, like, you know, if $5,000 is your problem, like, let
Mhm.
me give you this list and call these people. And
Mhm.
if you get a deal out of this, you'll have $5,000, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, so I do have people that make these calls,
Okay.
and they're local, and I just train them. And then depending on the type of deal, like earlier this year, I did a really big owner financing deal, um, where I purchased 25 tenants. I'm going to call it 25 units at once, and the seller carried the mortgage on that deal, right? Well, that one, because I saw the potential from that one on the list, that it was a person who had multiple properties. He It was a really big deal. I
Mhm.
made that call personally
Okay.
and started to develop a relationship with that seller personally, because that's what I've started to do lately. Is instead of buying one or two houses at a time, I've been trying to buy packages from investors that are older and maybe trying to get out. And so I've been buying those from from investors on owner financing when possible.
Okay. Okay. Good deal. Good deal. So, man, as you could see, I could talk to you, John, for hours, man, hours, because I'm just so impressed by you, your family structure, your commitment to your community, uh, just your overall outlook. I just think that you are a wonderful young man. And so, so I'm going to start wrapping it up. So I always ask people some kind of closing questions, but before we do that, what is the website, or how can somebody contact you if they want to find out about Family Time Center, if they want to talk to you about possibly being one of your students?
Sure. So Family Time, again, it's an event venue, an open play for kids. We're at familytimemansfield.com, www.familytimemansfield.com. If you want to reach out to me about real estate, as you can tell, Aleem and I both, we like real estate. I can talk about real estate forever. But you can reach out to me at my website at grabthemapllc.com. That's the website, grabthemapllc.com. You can always email me. I answer every single email that comes to my email personally. That's not somebody else answering. And that email is grabthemap@gmail.com. So love to hear from you if you're interested in real estate. I love talking about real estate, but I also am that person that's probably going to push you to do at least one deal. I'm probably the person that's not going to talk to you multiple times without saying, okay, it's time to do something.
Right,
Let's
right.
wholesale something. Let's flip something. Let's buy a rental. Because once you start to do it, it really is a snowball that can change your life. It can
Right.
change how you see money and how you view time. It's really cool. I love real estate.
Good deal. Good deal.
Yeah,
Good deal. So, so John, what book are you currently reading right now?
that's a good one. So I reread a lot of things. Let me look and see something that I've read lately, because this one is good right now because of COVID-19. It's called Profit First. Author on this is Mike Michalowicz. Okay. And it's really good for business owners that are trying to figure out how not to get in that cycle where it seems like you're getting deposits and then your account is empty, and then you're getting deposits and your account is empty. It's a really good book that kind of teaches you how to put money away and how to pay yourself first. And it's really good strategy, because if you're like me, I am one of those people who, I was used to getting paid on the first of the month and trying to have the month not run out of money before the month ended.
Right.
But this really teaches me in my business that if I pay myself first and then run my business, it affects the decisions that I make in my business, so that that profit is always building up and accumulating, and I can buy more rental properties.
That's awesome.
So Profit First is a really good book.
Profit First. All right. All right. So if somebody comes to town to see John Crutchfield, what's your favorite restaurant? Where are you going to take them?
Let's see. Right now, I really like Fish City Grill. It's a seafood kind of bar, hangout right at the corner of Debbie Road and Cooper, and it's in Mansfield. So I'm a South DFW person, and that's a good spot.
Good deal. Good deal. So you have kind of touched on this, but what advice would you give to groups? I think on this page, and people that kind of follow me and the people that I'm trying to attract fall in one or two categories. These are first-time investors that haven't pulled the trigger yet, and then secondly, investors that have pulled the trigger that's trying to grow their portfolio. So what's some advice that you would give to both of those two segments?
All right, so I think I'll combine the advice, because of what's helping me right now applies to both, and it would have helped me when I was new, and it'll help me now. Get around people that are doing more than you're doing right now. I know it might be uncomfortable, but if you want to have 1,000 rental units, or if you want to flip 100 houses a year, you need to be in a circle with somebody that's flipping that number. They need to be in your peer group or in your network. If you have not done your first deal and you're talking to people that have not done their first deal, you need to change that circle and talk to people that have done their first deal. Because I got a neighbor right now who's flipping his first house, and it's because he talks to me so much. I'm not going to let you not flip a house. I'm not going to let you not buy a property, because that's what I do. So I would say in both of those situations, our friends and our families are important to us. They're important to who we are. But if we're going to grow, and if we're going to move past where we are right now, whether it's one property or lots of properties, our network has to change with the direction that we're trying to go. And it's very uncomfortable. I'm an introvert. Might not seem like it. I was a principal of school. Nobody believes I was an introvert. Nobody believes that. But I was an introvert, and I intentionally now, if I'm walking somewhere or if I'm in the airport, like if I hear a conversation that might be about investing or interesting, I'm that person that's like all in your conversation and trying to meet you. And you've got business cards and you've got these things where you're trying to network. So that network is very important. So with the level that I'm at now and some of the things that I want to do, like it's very uncomfortable for me to talk about bigger numbers or talking about hiring employees and have some of these conversations, because I don't have that background. Mm-hmm. But best believe I'm surrounding myself with a new group that's going to help me move in that direction. Okay. Very important.
Okay. Are there any groups that you would like to name that if somebody, are you in some high level mastermind groups, or what types of groups are you in, if you can share?
Yeah, so I'll share the group that I participate in actively. It might not be a local group. There are a lot of local groups that you can participate in that if you go out on sites like meetup.com and look up real estate investor meetup groups and those sorts of things that you can get involved with. For the last few years, I've been participating in a boot camp with Grant Cardone. A lot of people know that name. He's I usually have my little stuff right here, but he's the 10X guy.
Mhm.
And so I am participating in a mastermind with them. It's very different when you walk into a room and you think you've got a really good business because your business made, $1 million last year or something. And then
Right.
you get in a room and people are like, my business made 100 million. And you're like, oh, I'm not doing anything. So, but that's the push. That's the
Right.
push that we need sometimes. When I
Exactly.
go in the
Exactly.
room, I'm a pretty large landlord now. And when I go in a room, somebody says, that's nothing. Like I have something else. It doesn't mean that I'm chasing other people, but
Right.
it does allow you to kind of let iron sharpen iron. Yeah.
And expand your horizons to
Yes.
what's possible. Yeah. Yeah. Good. Good. All right, John. I know I've said I was going to close, so I am going to close with this, man. We are almost at an hour, and so again, give out your site and your email address again. I'm quite sure I'm going to have you back on uh, again soon. So if you can give out your contact info one more time.
Sure. And I do want to just say I appreciate you for thinking of me and invite me on. I know the work that you're doing, capital is very important. Being able to find money and be able to make these investments using leverage is something that I do believe in. So I'm definitely hoping that you continue to grow in what you're doing. You can reach out to me at grabthemap@gmail.com. That's my personal email that I look at for real estate investing. You can also reach out to me on my website at grabthemapllc.com. And if you've got kids, they need something to do. You need a little place to work while your kids are playing. You do stay with them. It's an open play area, but you do stay with them to supervise. It is www.familytime.com. And we'd love to see you in Mansfield at Family Time.
Wow, great, great. Well, John, thank you again. I wish you just much success, man, and I'm quite sure we will be either seeing each other or talking to each other again soon. All right,
Sounds good, Aleem. I appreciate it.
all right, man. So thank you, and you have a great weekend. Okay.
All right, you too. All right,
All
bye.
right. Thanks, John.